Hello everyone, I'm Eric Lee. I'll be joined later by my brother Brian Lee, and we both have the joy of interviewing our mom, the most caring, smartest, bravest person I know. Welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
And what is your full name?
My full name is Gloria Bowman Lee.
All right, and we're going to break up the interview today into chapters. And the first chapter is your childhood. So even before we get to your parents, who is the oldest relative that you can remember?
My father's mother, my paternal grandmother, who was the only grandparent that I knew. And I remember her because my father would make regular visits from Asheville back to Relafordton, which is the city where my father and my mother grew up. And
And when would you estimate she was born?
probably around the 1860s.
1860s. And you were born on what date?
On August the 3rd, 1940.
1940. So let's talk about your parents. They were, their names?
My father was Nathaniel Bowman, and my mother went by Violet Bowman, but her official name was Frances Octavia Wright Bowman.
And they had you a little later for childbearing years, right? They were born in the roughly
The late 1800s.
1800s, so your mom was over 40 years old.
Yes.
So tell me a little about your mom. What was she like?
Okay. My mom was a relatively quiet person, but a very caring and giving individual. She was, no matter what you would give her, and some of the things I'm sure that we gave her were not things that she cherished, but you'd never know it because she was so grateful for whatever gift we gave her.
Can you think of a gift that you gave her that rings in your memory as a child?
Well, jewelry that I thought was pretty nice, but remembering what my purse was able to afford, I'm sure there wasn't much to it. It probably would tarnish the minute she put it on, but she was very grateful for it.
And your dad? What was he like?
My dad was kind of a community involvement person. He was a janitor by trade and very active in the Methodist Church. In fact, the church in Asheville has his name on the cornerstone because he was involved in getting the new church built. I was very much my dad's special one, and I knew that because he always looked out for me and brought me treats from work.
And tell me, I know you had brothers and sisters. How many children did your parents have?
Well, they had a total of 8, but I only knew the last 5. The 3 older girls died in their early teens, all from tuberculosis, and that was before I was born.
That has to be so devastating for your parents. I mean, to lose not 1, not 2, but 3 children. Was the 3 oldest?
The 3 oldest, yes, all girls, and my older siblings knew them. I remember of their death, but I only know them through my family.
Okay, so not counting the 3 oldest of your siblings who died early on, you had how many other brothers and sisters?
I had 1 sister and 3 brothers. At this time, I have 2 living brothers and myself. The 2 older ones are no longer living.
And you were the youngest.
I'm the youngest.
And what was that like growing up as a child, being the youngest in the family? It sounds like your dad spoiled you a little bit.
Just a little. I mean, just a little. And of course, the brothers weren't that happy with me getting that attention, so they tried to interfere when they could to take away some of my joy.
You want to share the experience?
Well, one thing was this, an orange. They would put a hole in the orange and squeeze out all the juice and then try to blow back into it and leave the orange there for me. That's the kind of...
And then you show up ready to enjoy an orange.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a juicy orange. And find out I got a dried out one.
Were they watching and laughing?
Yes.
Yes. Sounds like my uncles. So one of the things that's neat about doing this is we're here in 2016 and seeing what the technology differences was between now and back in the 1940s when you were a child. So I know I can pull out my cell phone and I can say, call my brother Brian's cell. And that's how I can make a call today. What was it like making a call when you were a child?
Well, number one, you didn't pull out a cell phone. Your phone was attached to the house through special wires. You would pick up the phone and the operator would come on and she'd say, number please. You tell her the number you wanted to reach. Our number was 7331M.
You still remember
I
it?
still remember it. And she would then connect you. Now, there was also no such thing as a private line. You shared your line with your close neighbors. So you may pick up the phone and they're having a conversation.
Another form of like TV or radio. You could be entertained by listening to someone else's
You could.
voice.
And I'm pretty sure that happened a lot. But at any rate, you may have a need to make a really critical call. And they're teenagers, and they're chit-chatting about this, that, and the other. But some things of not too much importance, and you may need to call the doctor's office about your appointment. So the only way you can get through is to ask them, would you release the phone for a moment? I need to make a quick call, and you can have it right back.
And were people usually accommodating? I mean, it's such a foreign concept today that you ask your neighbors, I need to use the phone.
Sometimes, most of the time, they were accommodating. Others say, we're just going to be a few minutes longer, and we'll be off.
Any other big technology differences that you want to share when you were a child?
Well, TVs were not objects that were in everybody's home. And in fact, the TVs came out later in life for me. Radio was the thing. Everything was radio. And we'd all gather around the radio and listen to the different stories. Boxing was a big thing.
So not watching boxing, but listening to a
Listening
boxing
to
match
boxing.
on the radio.
Exactly.
What a concept.
Yeah,
Today.
and you hear them, but the announcers were good. They gave you a good play-by-play description. And the Sunday night was Amos and Andy, and there was another one that came on, Kingfish. Anyway, it came on about that same time. Those were regulars that we always listened to.
Would it be kind of like a 30-minute sitcom?
30-minute
sitcom, and they'd have commercials just like in television on the radio?
Yeah, a little bit. And then the other thing with the airline would call you and talk to you about your reservation, and they would call you if the plane was being delayed. But of course, that was much later on because the airplane flight was not a regular thing. Lighting. We were fortunate we had indoor electricity, but when I went to Edna's graduation from high school, we stayed at a lady's home, and kerosene lamps was the way that the lights were. And that was the electricity for that home. That was in Virginia. And that wasn't uncommon, but we are fortunate enough that we did have electricity.
Another big difference is, as we sit here in 2016 from back in the 1940s, is obviously like racial tensions and racial issues. Growing up in North Carolina as a child, what are some things that maybe the younger generation now couldn't fathom that you had to deal with as a child in relation to race?
Well, it was everywhere you looked. It depended. If you're on the bus, it meant that you had to sit in the back of the bus, and you could only fill up coming forward. And if a white came on, they expected blacks to get up and give them their seat, no matter what age the person was.
Now you say white and black. It's so weird today, especially living in California. You have so many different races, but that wasn't the case.
No, we are strictly European whites and African American, as we know them today, colored, as they were referred to then. We did not have, I never saw a Hispanic, I never saw Asians in North Carolina. That was later. Now I understand there are quite a few.
Yes.
But the other thing is, like, you go shopping, blacks weren't allowed to try on clothing, whites could.
So the clothing at the store, usually you would try on the clothes before to see if it fit,
right.
and they wouldn't let blacks try on the clothes?
No. Then at the they had cafeteria, like at the Woolworth, we call it 5 and dime store, where people would go shop and get a little, maybe a sandwich or a hamburger or a shake. Blacks were not allowed to sit and have any food there in the Woolworth or Newberries or any of those.
They had to get outside.
Well, I don't even think we could purchase it. We couldn't get it. We'd have to.
Can't purchase things. You have to sit in the back of the bus. I know even from schools about the water fountains and
Yes,
bathrooms are labeled.
Colored water and white water.
One thing I thought was interesting is that old phrase of separate but equal, but they really weren't equal.
They definitely were not.
Tell us a little bit about how it was.
Well, when we traveled by car from Asheville to New Orleans, right, we stopped at this service station, and they had a water fountain. The water fountain was for the whites. But hanging on the side of the water fountain was a dipper. Dipper is like a long stem cup.
That everyone uses.
That is for colors. All colors were supposed to drink from that dipper. So, my father was a real fighter, and he said, if that's the case, we're not getting gas here, and we'd go on to another place. But the conditions were not that good, no matter where you were. And so we learned to take lunches. We packed lunches when we traveled, and packed things to drink, because the conditions were such that you couldn't count on being able to get some.
I'm wondering a little bit about the psyche of a child growing up in that time. It's such an unconscionable thing for many of us who grew up maybe in the 21st century. How did you feel emotionally when you see these things? Was it just this is the way it was, so it didn't bother you, or was it very frustrating?
Very frustrating, and a lot of anger and bitterness, and which I'm sure couples over has gone with me throughout my life. Although, I have certainly wonderful, I know people of various ethnic backgrounds, and very dear friends in all ethnic groups. But I think when you grow up in that kind of situation, you can't help but color things. And then when you do see evidence of prejudice and race, you react to it much more strongly.
Yeah, more sensitive.
Sure.
To it. Changing gears just a little bit, to wrap up the childhood years. As a child, did you think about what you wanted to do as a career? I mean, and what you'd want to do with the rest of your life?
Not so much as a child. It was in high school that I was reading this magazine and read about this individual who was a social worker and what that person did. Because most women in my time were teachers. And they weren't teachers, maybe nurse. But that was it for profession.
You didn't have any interest in
I
that?
had no interest in that. My sister was a teacher, and I think people thought that I would follow in her footsteps, but I wanted to be different. I wanted my own thing. And I liked what I read about what social work did, and that's how I got exposed, my initial exposure to the career of social work.
All right, so let's go to chapter 2, leaving your childhood, and talk about your high school and college years, because it was a distinct time in your life, because unlike many young kids, you didn't leave the home when you left for college. You left home in high school. So, and picking back a little bit, what I thought was interesting about your high school and college experience was the racial mix-up of the group. What was the racial mix of your high school?
Well, my high school was originally an all-girls, call-it girls high school. Okay. During my senior year, they had some boys to come in to integrate sex-wise, but they too were colored. There was no mixing, even in the Catholic Church. There's Catholic schools. There was no mixing of the races. Blacks were in one school, whites were in another, and that's the way it was. That's high school.
Okay, in college?
In college, it was 99% white. I was the lone black female, and there were maybe 5 or 6 black males, 3 of them sports, in playing basketball.
So very different. And on top of that, you're leaving home, you're on your own. How was that experience, your high school and college experience?
They weren't the most fun times of my life. I mean, it was challenging. I, loved the idea. I thought I would love the idea of being in high school with my brothers and all the fun things, the football games and the parades and all the activities of high school that I felt like I missed because I was in school, in private school away from home. Again, college did not allow me a good opportunity to interact with a diverse group of individuals. So that too was not the most positive experience.
Tell me a little bit about, I remember we talked earlier about this trip that you took when you were at St. Bonaventure. This is in college,
Yeah.
and this is when you were saying that you were was 99% white.
Yeah. Well, our basketball team was in a tournament in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they decided they would have a bus to go down from, this is upstate New York, to North Carolina for the tournament. And I chose to go, knowing that I had to get my own hotel accommodation, my own place to stay, which would be a black-owned hotel, because I couldn't stay at the major hotel where the rest of the members were staying. But at any rate, that was fine. I understood that before I left and away we went. Well, after the tournament, we were traveling back up to New York, and we stopped someplace, either it was in North Carolina or Virginia, and went into this restaurant. Everybody, the whole busload went in, and we sat, and they started taking orders, and they got to me, and they noticed my background, and they said to the person who kind of was the spokesperson for the group that we can't serve her. We can serve the rest, but we can't serve her. And so
You heard this.
yes.
Yeah.
So he said, well, you know, if you can't serve her, you can't serve any of us. So all of the busload proceeded to get up and go out and march out. And that made me feel good. Made me feel good about the support that the school and the members, nobody was complaining that they didn't get to get their food. And the person who was in charge says, I'm going to pass around the after dinner mints, and you guys can all enjoy this. And we'll get some food later up the road.
Well, that's wonderful, the support you had, and also amazing that the racist attitude cost them a lot of money.
Sure,
the
a whole busload of people.
Yeah.
But that's what racism is. It's not rational.
Right.
It's irrational and stupid.
Tell me a little bit, speaking of the civil rights movement, I don't believe there is anyone bigger that's ever lived in the civil rights movement, at least here in the United States, than Dr. Martin Luther King. And you had an opportunity to actually meet him. You want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I'm going to attach that to also my experience in going. I chose to go to Atlanta University to get my master's in social work because I needed a Black experience. Even though I'd been accepted at Columbia and also at in Washington at Catholic University for the master's program. But I chose Atlanta U because I wanted that experience, and also because I got what's called NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health grant, which paid all my tuition and gave me monies. But at any rate, that was during the height of the civil rights movement. And one of the offices was right down the street. On the corner from the dorms was Ebenezer Baptist Church. I was on the dorm council, and we would arrange for different speakers for the people there in the dorm, like once a month. And we had chosen Dr. Martin Luther King for this particular month.
And this would have been roughly in what year? In the early 60s, perhaps?
Right. I finished Bonaventure in 61, and I got my master's in 63, so it was probably around 62.
Okay.
So anyway, we were able to confirm Dr. King for the speech, so the other people on the dorm council said, you know, would you like to pin the corsage on them? And so I said, definitely, that's a privilege. So, and somebody else was going to introduce him. So when he came, and I introduced myself to him, and I was busy fixing the corsage on his coat, and I said, let's take you down the hill. And you know what his comment was? Said, don't worry, it'll be okay.
And he didn't stick him.
And I did not stick
A
him.
man who believed in nonviolence. That would be a terrible thing to do.
Well, I would not have done it intentionally.
Right.
You know, a little nervous, but he was so reassuring and very kind.
Yeah. Wow. Is that one of the bigger moments of your
that's-
looking back? You probably didn't appreciate
Didn't
it.
think that much of it at that particular moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, let's go on to chapter 3. And in chapter 3, we're going to talk a little bit about after school and your beginning work. So tell me about your first job after college, and how did you land it, and what type of work did you do?
Okay. After college.
Yes.
Not master's.
you can start. You can start
After college, yeah. After master's, okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the time that I got my master's, 1963,
You know, masters
in social work,
Yeah.
there was a tremendous amount of funds going into trying to make this great society, I guess, that somehow we haven't achieved. But I was actually solicited by the County of Los Angeles. They would go recruiting throughout the country for social workers. So I already had my job by the time I graduated, with the promise, of a job.
So this is in 1963.
1963, but here in Los Angeles, and that was not. I mean, I was looking forward to coming to Los Angeles. Richard and Laura, my brother and his wife, lived here, and they wanted me to come to USC to get my master's. But I kind of felt like Atlanta was where I needed to be. But anyway, so I came out with my father that August. We came out for vacation. And I started work the day after Labor Day in September, and in the city of El Monte. And that was my first job. I was in foster care placement.
So was this difficult culturally at all about the fact that you've never lived on the West Coast before, and now you've come out west? Was it an easy transition, the issue of living in the West Coast, or it was challenging?
It was easy, but I remember very much noticing all the different ethnic groups. Los Angeles had all kinds of nationalities, and even people wearing their native garb. So it was interesting, and I enjoyed it. And I think the family, the support of Richard and Laura, helped a lot. They kept me involved with their activities, and slowly I got to my own.
So my upwards, you're made up for the juice stealing.
I don't know, made up, but he certainly has tried to compensate, because the juice dealing was only one part. There's a lot. There's a laundry list.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, we don't have time in this.
That would take another day.
Tell me a little about just in general your career choices. Even looking back on it, and you're well retired now. What did you like the most about being a social worker?
The whole idea of social work is helping people to help themselves. So it's empowering others, not making others dependent on you, and that's what I liked about social work. To see people move from one phase or one stage to a functional stage that was beneficial to them and their families.
You worked in a lot of different capacities, a lot of different organizations, but how long did you work as a social worker?
Total years? From 63 to 99.
Okay, well that's
36 years.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yes, and you obviously enjoyed it to do it.
Oh yes, and I transitioned from foster care placement to adoption because I wanted to see more permanent placement rather than kids being shifted from one place to another due to, not that it happened all the time, but and even adoption is not 100% foolproof, but at least the feeling that was real positive.
So moving on to chapter 4, you've come out west, new area, you've gotten involved in social work, and on the job, somebody catches your eye, a little bit of romance in the air. Who was that, gentleman?
Well, in the El Monte office, where I started in September, they had a group of employees who came in December that had just finished some specialized training. And there was this one guy that was in that group who was a neat dresser. I mean, he wore lovely suits with pastel shirts and matching ties. And I was with a group that frequently played bridge during lunchtime. And pretty soon this guy started looking in on our bridge. And this, to date, he still enjoys looking in on bridge. But he's my husband, Clarence Lee.
Yes, and you guys, as of this filming, have been married for how long?
51 years.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
So tell me about
That's amazing.
Tell me about the courtship. So, so who made the first move that you guys might date?
I think that I may have invited him to a dance that we were going to, but he was constantly over my shoulder, and I think, I don't know how much bridge he learned, but he clearly watched my activities. I'd be we had like a little dictaphone, a room where you dictate your cases. I'd be in there dictating away, and there comes his face popping in, checking on me. So it was interesting how he would pop up here and there. You never know where.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember your first?
It was a formal dance, and we went. I think Richard and Laura were farther back, and it was down at the Lawrence. What's the name of that? Anyway, it's down in Hollywood on Sunset.
So
Palladium.
So the courtship and dating process in the 60s, a little different than today. Nobody went on their Facebook or looked at their...
Yeah.
You just...
It was all face to face. And Laura and Richard had introduced me to a few people. And when the parents came over one Sunday, I don't know what he had on when he first came in, but he came back in with changed clothes on. Laura really took to him, and then she, because of Lee, she really identified with Clarence. That Lee was that her maiden? I think that was her maiden name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we're going to do something real special now. I'm going to get up and I'm going to have a special guest join you for the next question, which I have, which is to tell me a little bit about your wedding. Where was it? Where did it take place? And how did the planning and everything go right up to the date of your wedding?
The wedding occurred in 1965, June 12th, in Asheville, North Carolina. And the reason it was there is because my parents were there, all the people who knew me when I was growing up were there. And actually, it was probably pretty close for Jackson for Clarence's family to come. But I went ahead about a couple of weeks, maybe a month ahead of time to do planning, further planning and preparation. And Clarence and a friend of his drove the car from here to Asheville by way of Jackson. And we honeymooned back to Los Angeles with all our wedding gifts, the car jam packed, and here we are.
How big was your wedding? How many people attended?
I said I estimated maybe 100 to 150.
And Dad, Clarence,
Yes.
You heard her talk. What was it from your point of view?
It was challenging kind of thing, getting there. But this lady who did so much, who did all the planning, who did everything to do with it, I was just amazed. And I would not think that, that I know I was not capable of doing what she did. So I'm just in awe of her then and today.
Nice guy, nice guy.
What you talked earlier about 51 years of marriage. The divorce rate is over 50% in today's society. What's your guys' secret to success?
I'll speak and you can say, but I think basically accepting one as they are. You're not a change agent. You can't change people. They have to want to change and change themselves. So I think maybe both of our background in social work too helped us with our basic understanding. So that's what I would contribute to it. Accepting the person as they are.
And to set off the next stage of your life, how long after you got married did you guys know that you wanted a family? Children?
I knew when I got married, but you didn't give your dad a chance to say what he contributed to 51 years.
Oh, I'm sorry. 51 years. What do you think the secret to your guys' success is?
Just letting each other be themselves. And even though that may not be what I would consider as the ideal or something, but we just, and it's not a matter of toleration. It's a matter of just, it's built on love and appreciation. And I think we have that for each other. And,
Great, thank you. So, thank you, Clarence Lee, for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Brian Lee, who's going to conduct the last 3 stages of Gloria Lee's life.
Okay, I am here with my mom now. Thank you very much, Eric. And Mom, I want to talk to you about some things that have gone on with you as a mother and with you as a grandmother, if we could get into that.
Okay.
So why don't we start with, when did you first find out that you would become a mother?
Well, I was still working in the Almani office, and I had a morning sickness. I didn't identify it as such, but I had like upset stomach. And I went to see this doctor in El Monte, and he diagnosed me as having the flu. Well, the flu kept on and on and on, and finally I saw a doctor named Kaiser, and we determined that I was indeed pregnant. But I did have a bit of morning sickness, and Clarence was constantly trying to get me to eat. We'd go out to a restaurant and I'd look at the menu and order all this stuff, and they'd bring it and I'd look at it and I gotta go.
I don't want it.
I don't want it. So that was how I first learned of my pregnancy. That's with you, Brian.
Okay.
The firstborn.
And where were you living at the time?
We were living in El Monte. Let's see. We were still in Temple City. We were probably in Temple City. We bought in El Monte before you were born. Still working both of us in the El Monte office. So you were born in Pasadena. We St. Luke's Hospital, and the doctor who delivered you called himself God's mailman, and he had lots of mail to deliver. And he delivered 2 mails to me. So you and Eric, and eventually the third one, Spider.
Okay. So pregnancies went okay with me. Pregnancy went okay with Eric. Both were full term.
Both full term.
And
you were healthy babies.
And you had some babies around the house for a while before Spider came along.
Well, you were here. Spider was there when Eric came home from the hospital. I came home from the hospital with Eric.
Okay.
And every time Eric would cry, he would go running down this hall in El Monte and put his feet up trying to figure out what was making that noise. And he had his trouble trying to figure out what was going on because it was different from what he'd experienced before.
Okay.
But they finally got to know each other.
Well, I know eventually they bonded pretty well.
Very much so. Yes, right.
Okay. So, talk to me about how you were with your children. What would you say was your parenting style?
Well, number one, it was cooperative because Clarence and I consulted and talked together about how we would handle different things. But I think that my philosophy is lead by example, provide love, and let that be your guide. Not say one thing and do something else.
Sure.
So that was
That's probably the best way that kids learn.
That's right.
So, any experiences that you remember as a mother that you feel really helped shape your children?
Well, with you, Brian, I remember Little League baseball. That was something that you enjoyed. And I especially remember the time that you chose to steal home plate, having made it around the bases, and your coach was not that happy, but you were thrilled that you achieved that without getting put out. So I think that exemplifies your willingness to take chances and your belief in yourself. And
Did I brag about that?
Oh yes, you've talked about that a few times. So that I remember very well.
And what about with your other son?
With Eric, I remember the ability to be very satisfied, self-play with his little toys on the floor, with Spider nearby. In fact, I have a picture somewhere of him and Spider during the active part of playing, and then later the two of them sound asleep on the floor with the toy resting beside them. So I think that ability to entertain oneself and to enjoy life as it is at the moment is something that I saw Eric able to do.
And then as both Eric and I got older, both your sons ended up going to college, graduating from college. I know that was something that you really wanted.
Definitely. In fact, my parents had instilled in us the importance of an education because that is critical to being able to make any advancements. And we proceeded to push the same thing, your dad and I. And we were thrilled that you were identified in the gifted program at Baldwin Hills, and that Eric, while he didn't get in the gifted program, was identified as a 6.9-year-old who had the mathematical ability of an adult.
Wow.
So, you know, both of you guys applied yourself and worked hard in school and ended up both achieving your master's degree in your particular field. So I'm really proud of your achievements and what you've been able to do with your life.
Thank you. And you have the 2 sons, but eventually you ended up gaining a daughter. How did that come about?
Okay, my oldest son was ready for marriage. This was around 2001, I think. And the woman that he had met was named Marilyn. And she indeed had become a daughter fully in this family.
And she's helped the family expand even more?
Yes, that's the source of my 2 granddaughters. Remember, I had you 2 sons and always kind of longed for a girl, but was fearful that that 3rd one would be another boy. So instead, I got the 2 granddaughters, and those are my girls. And I can remember very much the first birth of the first grandchild, which has a large impact because it's the first time becoming a grandparent.
Sure.
I was working at the polls. It was the election year. It was in June, the primary election. And I get this call that Marilyn was in the hospital, and that later I get another call that she had delivered. But I had to work until 8 p.m. when the polls closed. So I worked, and immediately parents and I took off for the hospital, which was right here in Whittier, where Serena, the oldest grandchild, was born. Now later, and not that much later, just a year or so, the second granddaughter was born, and she was born in Arcadia. Isn't that where Arcadia?
Yep.
What I remember much about Imani was seeing all this huge head of hair. But as excited as I was with the first one, I was equally excited to welcome Imani as my second grandchild.
Any experiences that you could tell me about, significant experiences with them that you've had as a grandparent over the years?
Yes. When say significant, they're all significant. It's hard to pick one. But anyway, I remember with Serena, she loved to ride on her papa's back. And he let her get on and ride a little bit, and then she'd get off. And she would always say, again, Papa! Again, Papa! And that was, and of course Papa would accommodate her, but she loved that. And with Imani, there's always my fear she was going to hurt herself. We would hold her and she'd go back. She'd throw her head back hard. I mean, she was a strong child. And, just held her tight and let her know she was loved, and I had her back. So.
I know for my girls, all the trips out to Palos Verdes, where you were living, were all very special. I remember them sitting with you by the piano. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How was that?
Well, my sister Edna had said, if you want the girls to learn to enjoy music, set them in your lap and just play. And that's what I did. And I think that while they haven't stayed with the piano. I think they do love music. It's in the form of singing, and they both sing quite a bit.
And I've seen you do that not only with them but with cousins and
Right.
a lot
But
of
Edna
people.
was a music instructor, and that was her major, music education. So I respected her recommendations in that regard, and that seemed to work. But I remember another thing when we had a large group of family members in Palos Verdes for some event. I don't know if it was Thanksgiving but for some gathering. And then the next time when Serena came, it was just Clarence and I. And she walked in and she said, "Nobody's here." I said, "Yes, there is. Nana and Papa are here." And I realized she was talking about because there's such a large gathering before that now it was really pretty quiet.
It's just that full house.
Full house. And Imani is one, she knows what's in this house better than I would say. She'll come in and she'll gather up stuff. She makes herself at home, and I love that she feels that freedom to get what she wants and to do what she wants.
So how has your relationship changed with the two of them as they've gotten older? Right now they're both entering their teenage years, a lot more mature than they once were.
Right. Well, they've taught me. They both have taught me technology, which I still need a lot of help with. And I
Teach
think
me that too.
that they appreciate the opportunity to show me about different things, the phone, the computer, and that's true both Imani and Serena.
Okay.
And I think that the normal growth is occurring. That happen as they get older. They're beginning to move toward peers versus family, a lot of family involvement. And that's good. That's the normal growth and behavior.
Progression.
Right. But there's no diminishing of love for me and for Clarence and for the rest of the family, I'm sure.
And you feel that?
I feel that.
Great. All right, well, what I'd like to do now, move on from chapter 5 to chapter 6. And chapter 6, what I'd like to do is just mention one word, and you tell me what your favorite is of that word. So I'm going to ask you the first word animal. You tell me what is your favorite animal. So one word answers, sort of a quick draw here, and just to get an idea of where Gloria stands on a number of different things.
Okay.
So your favorite animal.
Spider / Coco. I didn't get to say Coco when we talked about the grandchildren, but that's my grand dog, and I do
Okay.
need to make sure that he's also mentioned.
Okay.
Okay?
You love Coco.
I love Coco.
I know he loves you
Yeah.
when you come over.
Right.
You're one of his favorites.
We bonded. We bonded early on when I kept him until Christmas for you guys, so that Imani would not know that he was here in advance.
Yes, and then they found him they got to know Coco. They met Coco by,
Met him by
yeah,
opening their gift.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for holding on to him for that time.
You're welcome.
So, who is your favorite artist?
My favorite artist is Sammy Davis Jr. He's a man of multiple talents. I know he's deceased now, but he can sing, he can dance, he can impersonate, he can do the gun act. He's just multi-talented.
Okay. I want to try to keep you to just the answer for your favorite book.
My favorite book. That one's hard to come up with.
Okay, you can think about it. I'll keep going. Your favorite card game?
bridge without a doubt.
Your favorite color?
Red,
Your favorite flavor of ice cream?
vanilla, you can do so much with it.
What is your favorite flower?
The African violet, and it's one that my mother grew. And it's one I have in the kitchen right now that bloomed, was in full bloom when I got it, and it shows 2 new blossoms coming.
Yay! Your favorite fruit?
Apples.
What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas,
Your favorite meal?
the Thanksgiving turkey and dressing and all the works.
What's your favorite movie?
In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier.
How about your favorite music group?
I have 2 favorites, the Platters and the Temptations.
Favorite musical instrument?
The piano,
Your favorite singer?
my favorite singer.
Individual singer.
Favorite singer. Marian Anderson. And you guys may not know her, but she was the first black to perform in the New York Metropolitan Opera House.
What's your favorite season?
The spring, the new growth, new life, and start anew. Spring.
How about your favorite song? Did I ask you that?
My favorite song?
Favorite song?
No, but Claire de Lune is the piano version that I love by Debussy.
How about your favorite sport?
Basketball has become it. I wasn't hot on sports as I was growing up, but I love basketball now.
And your favorite TV program?
60 Minutes, old, but I still love it.
Very good. And then we were going to go back to your favorite, what was it?
The book?
Yeah, your favorite book.
Mm.
You want to pass? You have the right to pass.
Invisible Man by Robert Ellison.
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to go through those. Give us a better idea of exactly what you like. So let's move on to our final chapter, chapter 7, where we just want to get some Gloria words of wisdom. So talk to us a little bit about U.S. history. I want to get your perspective on U.S. history and maybe what you feel are one of the most significant moments that you've lived through in U.S. history.
I think probably the civil rights time when I think for me it started when John Kennedy, JFK, was elected president, and there was that hope that things would change, and it was after his assassination when Lyndon Johnson came into office that the actual Civil Rights Act was signed into law. But that meant that the conditions that I described earlier were in terms of segregation and not blacks not being able to eat or sleep or drink. That meant that that was no longer by law legal. But I think despite all that, one of the messages that I'd like to give is life is full of challenges, and I faced many challenges. And I think that everybody has their own challenges in life. But that does not mean that you can't go forth and achieve and accomplish the things that you want in life. You have to have faith, a belief in God, and a belief that things can happen that you want to have happen, and it will indeed come true. So that's don't let challenges get you down. They're going to be there, that's granted. But overcome those challenges.
And you mentioned faith, and it sounds like that's a big part of it for you. Tell me why.
Because I had probably the exposure, not just to Catholicism, because my father was a man of great faith and he was Methodist, but they both believed very much in God. And historically, the slaves survived based on their faith and belief in God. All the Negro spirituals talk about a better world, and heaven and God, and so, you know, if they were able to survive that way, for God's sake, we need to look at the example that they've given us and to follow through and use that to move us on. And so that's that faith, and I've seen faith work for me. Look at the life that I've been blessed with. How can I not have faith? I have 2 sons who have never been involved with the law, with being in jail or prison. I have a husband who's always provided for the family and showed love and concern and support for all of us. So if that's not a blessing, tell me what is.
So, when you look at the world today, I'd like to get your perspective. You talked a little bit about history even, and today we're at the point where there is an African American president who's going to be leaving office soon, and a world where a lot of changes are happening. With world events. I'd like to get your perspective on how you think we're doing. Any advice that you'd give sort of society-wide as you look at things today with the knowledge and history that you've accumulated? Well, do you feel we're doing good, or if not, how can we do better?
There's a couple of things. I think we have the media now to expose everything that happens, but things were not always that great. We've heard in the past of arms being cut off. We had the Colosseum where the Christians were thrown to the lions. That's not fun and games. That's pretty serious stuff. But the media today picks up on everything, so I'm not so sure that things are horrible today compared with other times. But I do think that I don't see progress occurring. I see everything seems to take on a different form. Like, for instance, the Ku Klux Klan, who would burn crosses and intimidate blacks, are not doing that as much overtly, but instead some of them have infiltrated the police department, and they can do it without any question asked. So it's a matter, but that's not progress. That's just making some modifications in terms of how it's taking place. But I think the only answer is this: pray. That's the only answer. And to realize that this world is only temporary. Make the best of you can of it while you're here, and hopefully leave in good standing when you depart. That's my hope for myself. I'm trying to do my best. So those are my words.
I think that's a beautiful summation. And if we can do that, I think the world will be a better place. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to sit with my brother and I and talk about you and your life and your thoughts and your experiences. Very much appreciated, and thank you. I thank you.
You're very welcome, and I'm happy to be able to do this. I know that you guys didn't have a lot of detailed information on me. I didn't write a book like Clarence did, so hopefully this fills in the blanks for the information you didn't have, and that you can share it too with the grandkids, and they can share it with their kids. So,
Certainly.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank Eric.